Hi everybody, it's Senpai Fanfics back at it with another amazing content. What if Deku was a hold of stealing Qiurk'S? If you guys would like to see more videos like this in the future, hit the subscribe button and notifications on for more videos like this. Thank you to the creator of the fanfic, which will be linked below. Let's start it.
At the young age of 4, Izuku Midoriya discovered the world was not fair, Qiurk'less, bullied and kicked into the dirt more times than he could count. He was Deku, the worthless Qiurk'less loser. Nobody respected him, and his best friend had turned into the worst of his bullies. To say his outlook on life was good would have been a lie, to say the least. Then again, at the age of 10, Izuku relearned this lesson. After all, he did indeed have a quirk, one he had never quite expected to have. After all, what's stronger than being able to give and take quirks in a world that was based off of them? Izuku Midoriya's story began after standing up to his friend for the first time. The boy in question had turned into what could only be described as a villain. He flaunted his power over others by beating them into the ground with his quirk, Explosion. One day, after being shoved back by his childhood tormentor, Izuku felt it first, then saw it. A string coming from Bakugo. He could sense it, and he felt compelled to pull, the very essence of body screaming to take the thing and rip it from Bakugo, and so he did. The weird thing was that Bakugo stopped after Izuku had ripped the thing from him. He was sitting still, just staring at his hands. Izuku was confused, to say the least. He had never seen this behavior from Bakugo before. Breaking him from his reverie, his ex-friend screamed. "Deku, what did you do?" Bakugo roared before starting to stomp towards the boy. Izuku decided now was the time to flee, so he turned and ran. He didn't stop until he was all the way back home. It wasn't until Izuku had reached the door to stop and consider what he'd done. Izuku could feel the string inside of him, and as if on instinct his body told him to pull it, so he did, and once he had tiny sparks had started to appear in his hands. So that's what he did, Izuku realized. He had stolen Bakugo's quirk. His quirk lets him steal quirks. The irony of the situation was not lost on the boy. He was no longer a worthless, weak Deku. He was strong, and Bakugo was the Deku now. He finally brought himself out of his thoughts and opened the door to see his mother in the kitchen cooking. Calling out to her, he said, "Mom, Mom, look at my quirk." Izuku created tiny sparks from his hands while he said that, showing her his new quirk. The face on the woman went from joy to confusion to shock at the sight. "Izuku, isn't that Katsuki's quirk? Or do you just happen to have the same one, dear?" Inko said, quite surprised, as the odds of the latter seemed astronomically low, since neither her nor her husband had a quirk even remotely similar to that. "That's not my real quirk, Mom. My real quirk lets me steal quirks. I took Bakugo's so he couldn't bully people anymore," Izuku explained. The house phone began to ring after her son finished telling her about his quirk. But she was sure she knew who was calling right now. "Izuku, we need to talk about this. Stealing from others is wrong, even if they were being bullies." She sighed, grabbing the phone, noticing the name on caller ID. "Hey Mitsuki, I already know what you're calling about. Izuku just told me about what happened." "Yeah, your son stole my brat's quirk. Inko, I don't think I need to say how scary of a quirk your son has. Katsuki has been crying ever since he got home. Do you know if Midoriya can return quirks, or is it permanent? If he can you make him give it back to Katsuki, please?" Mitsuki stated in a manner that sounded more defeated than actually angry. "Yeah, I was just about to talk to him about it. I'll figure out how exactly Izuku's quirk works before you get over here." Inko sighed again, realizing this was going to be a long night. "Thanks, Inko, we'll be right over," Mitsuki said as she hung up. "Izuku, please tell me everything that happened and what you know about your quirk. We need to figure out if you can give quirks back before the Bakugos get here," Inko explained to her child. Izuku paused before responding. I can sense strings? I just pulled on it and I took it from Bakugo. I have to physically touch someone, I think. As for giving it back, I have no idea if I can, Mama, but I don't want to give it back to him. He's just going to start abusing people with it again. He's a bully, Mom. Bullies shouldn't have powers if they are going to misuse them," Midoriya explained to his mother. Izuku, you aren't the law, you don't get to decide who does and doesn't get to have quirks. Please don't fight me on this. The woman was done with this conversation. At first Izuku didn't want to give it back, but the more he thought about the more he realized that she was right. Alright Mom, I'll give it back, but I want to set some rules before I do. I want him to stop being a bully at the very least. Izuku finally relented. 30 minutes passed before there was a knock at the door. Assuming it to be the Bakugo's, Inko went to the door before opening it. She was greeted with the sight of Masaru looking at Izuku with fear, Mitsuki looking bored more than anything but their son Katsuki. He just looked dead. He must be crushed without a quirk, she realized. I'm sorry we had to meet like this, but please come in. I have tea for all of you if you want some, Inko said while ushering them in and onto the couch. Masaru was notably giving Izuku a wide berth, Inko noticed. Mitsuki took a sip of her tea before speaking. While I do wish we were meeting under different circumstances, we do need to take care of this, Inko. Izuku, can you tell me what exactly happened earlier today? Izuku began twirling his thumbs together. Well, Bakugo was threatening me with his quirk, and then when he shoved me, I saw a string coming from Bakugo, so I pulled on it, and suddenly I had his quirk. That's all that happened, really. Izuku put his head down after. Mitsuki looked at her son before continuing. Did you attack Izuku, Katsuki? Yeah, I attacked that stupid Deku. He thought he could be a hero without a quirk. It was for his own good. Now he has that evil villain's quirk that only lets him take from others. Bakugo cringed from hearing the boy say his name earlier, and not Kaken for some reason that hurt him inside, but then the fire returned. You hear that, Deku? You're a fucking villain, you hear me? You're a fucking freak with a freak's quirk. Everyone in the room froze from the sheer venom dripping from the boy's speech. The language excluded Mitsuki was speechless hearing her son talk like that. She hit him on the head. Katsuki, never speak like that again, and your quirk isn't evil, Izuku. What happened sounds like it was an accident. Can you try giving it back, please? Izuku was still trying to collapse in on himself to get away from Bakugo, but he heard his name spoken, so he knew he couldn't avoid this conversation. I can try, but I don't want to get exploded anymore. Can you promise to stop using it on me, Bakugo? Mitsuki looked at her son after a large amount of time passed without him speaking. Well, Katsuki? No fucking way I'm going to put down this villain before he has the chance to steal even more quirks. Bakugo was glaring daggers into Izuku. Katsuki, she slapped her son again. I will not tolerate you threatening to kill Izuku. What the hell is wrong with you? Bakugo was rubbing his face from the slap. Look what his fucking quirk can do. He could take the quirk of everyone in here by just touching them. Izuku started crying after hearing what his ex-friend said. He knew they were never going to be friends again, but he wanted to kill me. I don't want to give it back if he's going to do that. Izuku was rubbing his eyes. Inko just looked between the two children, before stealing her gaze and looking at her friend's ex-son. Katsuki, if you touch my child, I swear nothing will stop me from getting you. The gaze horrified the boy. He'd never seen Inko look like that. Masaru finally decided to step in. All right, everyone, let's please calm down. We're getting too heated here. Let's take a minute and calm down. A tense silence passed before Mitsuki spoke. All right, it's clear things have become strained between the two of you, but Katsuki, you will promise to stop hurting Izuku. I don't care about his quirk, do I make myself clear? Bakugo looked to the side. Fine, old hag. Deku, give me my fucking quirk back, I won't use it on you. Izuku shakily held his hand out, but as he did a thought occurred to him. Something so wrong, so out of character he can't believe he was thinking it. This was his quirk now, and there was no way Bakugo was going to listen to his mother. Plus his mother had a point, they had no way of knowing if Izuku could even give Qiurk'S back, though he was pretty certain that he could. On top of that, Bakugo just threatened to murder him if he got his quirk back. I'm not taking that risk if I don't have to. Besides, this was payback for the years of torment Bakugo inflicted on Izuku. I don't know if I can even give it back, but I can try. Take my hand, Bakugo. They sat like this for 10 minutes while Izuku pretended to give his quirk back. On the other hand, Izuku definitely knew he could return quirks now. After he initiated physical contact with Bakugo, he felt the ability to push the string back into the boy if he wanted to. I'm so sorry, Izuku stammered out. I don't think I can do it. Katsuki just deflated at those words. Izuku had never seen the boy look so pale, but after what he did and said today alone, he felt he more than deserved it. Hopefully with some time without a quirk, and he'll learn to be a better person, although Izuku did feel a little guilty about it, but he figured he could just hold on to it for a few weeks before giving it back. It was Mitsuki's turn to chime in. All right, well, it seems we won't be getting anywhere today, but please keep trying to find a way to give his quirk back, Izuku. You know, it was everything to Katsuki, and without it, well, just look at him. Izuku cringed after seeing the look on Bakugo's face. Maybe he should just give it back now. No, this will be a good learning experience for him, Izuku finally decided. It's definitely not because I want to keep it or anything, he told himself. The Bakugo stood to leave, but Katsuki was just staring at the floor. After a little more time passed and his parents realized he was in shock, Masaru grabbed his hand and led Katsuki from the house. Mitsuki just said a sad goodbye to Inko before they left. Inko looked at her child in various levels of intrigue and fear, realizing just what her son was capable of. Izuku, you must keep your quirk a secret, honey. Imagine what people will think of you if they found out you can permanently rob them of their quirk by simply touching them. Your quirk is extraordinary, Izuku, but it's also incredibly horrifying, and when dealing with things like that it's best to handle it with a level of caution. All right, dear. I will love you regardless, but either way it's time for bed, Izuku. All Izuku did was say I love you in kind and walk off to bed, but little did they know that this wouldn't be kept secret for very long. The next morning. As Izuku made it to the school next morning, but for some reason everyone was giving him hushed looks and whispering behind his back. He was used to bullying and being made fun of, but this was very different from the usual. Confused, he walked over to one of his classmates in order to ask them what was going on. The person in question just looked at Izuku in fear and screamed, running away, begging him to not steal his quirk. Oh, Bakugo told everyone about my quirk, I guess. Well, that's fun. That being said, getting left alone is probably better than getting bullied, at least. Other than that, though, he realized his mother was right. Izuku had a villainous quirk, and if he were being honest with himself, he had been using it like a villain. Then again, Bakugo literally threatened to kill me if I gave him his quirk back, so maybe I'm doing the right thing. He was broken from his thoughts when the intercom blared to life. Izuku Midoriya to the principal's office. Izuku Midoriya to the principal's office. The line cut after that announcement. Izuku just sighed in defeat and started walking towards the principal's office. Once he reached the office of the principal, the secretary ushered him into the room of the principals almost immediately. Upon looking into the room, he saw two chairs sitting in front of the principal's desk, one empty, the other occupied by a familiar spiky blonde-haired child with a shit-eating grin on his face. Principal Nakihara, on the other hand, looked livid. Midoriya, it has come to my attention that an incident occurred at the playground yesterday. Your quirk came in, that's good, but then you used it to somehow steal Bakugo's quirk. Return his quirk at once, Midoriya. The man slammed his hands on the desk when said that last part. If Izuku were being honest, he fucking hated this man. He's covered Bakugo's abuses for the entirety of the time he was here just because he was their star pupil. Hell, the man often blamed Izuku for being the one to start the fight if Bakugo got caught in the act. In his mind, this man was worse than Bakugo. He actively encouraged abuse in his school, and Izuku hated it. However, being wise enough to not voice his opinion, Izuku just sighed before speaking. Sir, I already had this talk with the Bakugos. I don't know if I can return a quirk once I take it, and even if I could, I have no idea how to do that. The principal slammed his hands on the desk again. Then find a way, Midoriya. If his quirk isn't returned within 10 minutes, I will be calling the police. You have robbed the future of one of our best and brightest. And if you cannot fix it, then I swear to God, I will bring the vengeance of the law down upon you." Izuku called it, of course. Had this man ever once went to bat for him? No, he just scuffed everything that Bakugo did under the rug, and now that I made Bakugo the Deku, he's lashing out at me for it. Izuku had two choices now: give it back, and they realize he was lying, or double down and have the police called. Since there was no way Izuku could get in trouble for this, Izuku went with the second option. He was literally quirkless until yesterday, and honestly today had just proven his point even further. Bakugo Katsuki does not deserve having a quirk. He's a violent bully that manipulates the people around him and uses his power to stand over them while he kicks them into the dirt. He's a villain, nothing more, nothing less, and now that his favorite toy was taken, he's throwing a temper tantrum just because he can. Izuku just sighed again. "I can try again, sir, but I really have no idea if I can do this." Izuku then went and faked another attempt at giving the boy's quirk back, and after 10 minutes of him trying true to his word, the principal called the police. Izuku wasn't sure what the principal thought this was going to accomplish though. Izuku is 10 years old, for crying out loud. So there Izuku sat in an office for around an hour, trapped between two people he really would rather not be trapped between. When the door finally opened, Izuku cheered silently. It revealed two people, one absolutely tall skeleton of a man with blonde hair and blue eyes wearing a really tacky yellow suit. The other was a much more normal-looking man with black hair and a detective's badge. It was a strange pairing, to say the least. The detective spoke first. "Hello, my name is Detective Naomasa Toskachi," he said as he flashed his badge. "We came because of the incident of a child stealing another child's quirk. Which of these two is the one who took the quirk?" The principal responded by pointing at Izuku. "May we borrow your office, Principal Nakihara? We would like to get the boy's statement in private, if that's all right with you." The principal stood ushering himself and Bakugo out of the room. The detective sat down in the chair opposite Izuku and began asking the boy questions. "So Midoriya, is it true that you took that boy's quirk?" "Yes, it is, but it wasn't on purpose, I swear. In fact, I was considered quirkless until yesterday," Izuku explained to the man. All of that pinged as a truth, which greatly relieved the detective. At least the boy didn't do this on purpose, and he only has his hands on one extra quirk. That being said, this child either possesses a quirk similar to All for One, or All for One is involved in this somehow. Both options didn't make the man happy. "All right, that's fine then. Can you give the quirk back, Midoriya?" "I don't know if I can. I've only had the quirk for a day, not even actually." The boy lied to the police officer. Well, that's not good, Sakachi realized. "Midoriya, do you want to take a guess at what my quirk called lie detector does?" The man leveled a gaze at the boy. Oh, Izuku was fucked. Satisfied by the look on the boy's face, Sakachi continued. "Things are going to get serious if you don't tell me why you won't return the boy's quirk, Midoriya. I'm sorry for lying, but please believe me, I had good intentions in not giving it back," Izuku stammered out. Strangely enough, that wasn't a lie. The boy genuinely believed he was doing the right thing by not giving it back, and that somehow worried Sakachi more than if it had been a lie. Was the boy delusional or something? "The person I took it from was a bully. He used his explosion quirk to hurt people. I was one of his main victims. I just wanted to keep him from hurting people. I want to be a hero after all. Plus, I figured I would return it in a few weeks at the most. Just enough time to make him get used to being quirkless like the person he used to beat daily. Also, I don't know if this has anything to do with it, but I feel kind of possessive of the quirk. It's like I hunger for it. I've never felt anything like that before." By the end of it, the detective was both equal parts relieved and appalled. At least this boy wanted to be a hero and not use his quirk to become the next Dark Lord or something. "Izuku, while every single thing you just said was true, and I applaud your bravery in standing up to a bully, this compulsion, can you fight it?" the man asked the scared child in front of him. Izuku nodded. Yes, but it's kind of hard. Like when you told me what your quirk does, part of me wanted to take it. I'm kind of scared of this feeling, if I'm being honest. For the first time in the entire conversation, the skeleton man spoke. My name is Yagi Toshinori, young Midoriya. I would like to ask you a few questions. The main one being, why do you want to be a hero? Izuku paused as he thought for a bit. I really just want to save people with a smile like All Might. He's my favorite hero. Yagi Toshinori winced as his name was brought up, and he looked over at Tsukachi to see a thumbs up indicating that the boy did not lie to him. That is commendable, young Midoriya, but what you did was akin to vigilantism the way you described it. You took the law into your own hands to deal with a threat and decided that the other boy should not have a quirk. Young Midoriya, you are not the law. You are not even an adult yet. You are a 10-year-old child with a very, very strong quirk. The man scolded the child. I know, but he threatened to kill me if I gave it back. He called a monster that needed to be put down. I was scared. Izuku shook in fear. Both men exchanged a look. Tsukachi confirmed it to be true. Toshinori had a face of sheer rage. The bullying was that bad? I swear I will look into this, young Midoriya, but you will have to return the quirk. I promise that other boy won't hurt you anymore. That being said, as the incident was the result of an accident, there will be no formal charges pressed, at least for you. Please do not let this incident occur again, as next time we can't explain it away as a mere accident. Izuku leveled the boy with a gaze that made it clear repeat offenses would not end in a similar manner. Izuku let out a breath he didn't know he was holding. Now that he was out of immediate danger, his curiosity returned. Sir, I can kind of see quirks now. They look like strings with unique characteristics that I can pull on to take them. Why do you have 7 quirks? Also, why do they look so weird? They're all wispy and ghosty, kind of like they aren't even really there. The boy asked the skeleton, to which Toshinori coughed blood in sheer surprise. He gave a look to Tsukachi and decided that this boy needed to now, since he will likely be targeted by him in the future because of his quirk. All Might was pretty certain that he had killed the bastard, but they were never able to find the body to confirm his death. Hopefully it was just one of his followers dragging off the body to bury it, but deep down part of him knows that it wasn't true. Sir, are you okay? You just coughed blood. Izuku grabbed a napkin from the desk and panically handed it to the man. It is simply my old injury flaring up. Do not worry yourself about it. All right, young Midoriya, as there is a high chance that you will be involved in this in the future, I am going to tell you something. You must swear not to reveal anything I am about to say. Do you understand? The boy gulped in response and then nodded. Toshinori buffed up, appearing in his All Might form. Young Midoriya, my quirk is called One for All. It is a sacred torch passed down through the generations, and I am its 8th user. The quirk is 2 different quirks combined, although it appears there may be remnants of the others in the quirk based off of what you just said. Anyway, the first is the quirk to stockpile power, which is why One for All gets stronger with each generation, and the second is the ability to pass itself onto another person. You're probably wondering why I'm telling you all this, my boy. Well, it is because those 2 quirks were combined by another's quirk. One who can give and take quirks. Sound familiar? That man is the world's greatest evil. He's always hidden himself in the shadows, manipulating actions from the shadows, and he has been around for over 200 years now. You get it right. The ability to just take quirks as one pleases. A quirk to stop aging, perhaps? This man has a love for power and uses his abilities to take and control. Although I finally defeated him 1 year prior, which is where I got this injury of mine, my boy. I'm sure you understand why we were so worried when we first came in here. Finishing his story, All Might deflated back into his true form. Izuku couldn't believe his eyes. He had been talking to All Might this whole time, and they were just trying to make sure they didn't have another Lord of Darkness on their hands. It finally clicked for him just how dangerous his quirk was. All Might, there's a question I need to ask. Can I be a hero with this quirk? A villain's quirk? All Might just laughed. Boy, no quirk is villainous. Quirks are simply tools to be used, and with yours I'd say you could become one of the best heroes of all time using it. His idol believed in him? Izuku was openly weeping now, and he had no intentions of hiding it. Finally, someone believed in him. Young Midoriya, this was an enlightening conversation, but what if I said I had a proposition for you? How would you like to be trained by me? And as it so happens, I have the perfect way for you to use your quirk completely legally, and it would be beneficial to the police, provided you follow through and actually return young Bakugo's quirk. After hearing that Izuku couldn't contain himself, he ran out the door, slapped Bakugo's hand, and ran back into the room screaming "yes" at the top of his lungs. This was the origin of the pro-hero All for None. Chapter 2. It was the day following Izuku's meeting with All Might. To say his life changed drastically in the last 24 hours would be an understatement. Bakugo got punished for the first time after Tsukachi talked to the principal about comments that the boy had made. That was the first piece of good news. Second, he was about to be personally trained by the #1 hero All Might, his idol. Izuku couldn't believe his luck. Funnily enough, Izuku had been expelled by the principal, but he's never been happier. Izuku honestly didn't care about that shithole anyway. Every person at that school had been awful to him. Plus, All Might mentioned he would handle my schooling himself, so Izuku knew it'd be fine regardless. On top of that, the entire school had been threatened by All Might. If they spoke of me or my quirk, they would be sued for spilling a government secret, which Izuku couldn't believe his quirk counted as that, but I guess the original All for One was as well, so it only made sense. Izuku hadn't been able to sleep a wink, but he was still absolutely beaming. With a skip in his step, he put his shoes on and nearly ran out the door. All Might had asked Izuku to meet him at Dagaba Beach, and there was no way he would let the man down or be late. The smile had dwindled a little when Izuku arrived at the beach in question. Was all of this a prank? 'Cause I'm pretty sure this is a garbage dump. He had arrived at exactly 5:59 a.m. 1 minute before All Might had told Izuku to meet him there, and Izuku could see head nor tail of the man. That was until a yellow flash jumped down in front of the green-haired child. Izuku assumed the man had been hiding on the top of one of the piles of garbage, but that honestly didn't matter because now the #1 hero stood before him. It hadn't been a prank after all. Izuku smiled to himself. It's all right now. Why? Because I am here, All Might exclaimed, doing his signature catchphrase, and then not so signature, deflating into a shriveled husk of a man and coughing out blood. Izuku grew pale at the sight. Are you okay, All Might? All Might simply replied, I'm all right, my boy. It has been a year since my injury, and I am more than accustomed to it by this point. Anyway, how did you sleep, young Midoriya? Not very well, honestly. I was too excited to sleep. I mean, training with you. People would kill in order to have this chance, Izuku replied. Just prove yourself to me, my boy, and you'll have no need to repay me. You have already proven yourself once by returning that bully's quirk. All Might replied, but noticed Midoriya looking rather sheepishly at him. All Might, I need to ask a question that's been really eating at me. Saying nothing, All Might gestured for the boy to go on. Did you offer to train me only because you're worried I'll be the next All for One? I don't know. I don't want you to be training me because you're afraid of me, I guess. Izuku couldn't look the man in the eyes while he said this. All Might paused for a second before responding, No, my boy, you have nothing in common with that vile evil. I had no doubt you would become a hero all your own, but I wish to ease the process as much as possible since as it stands you are basically quirkless, and we need to find you a source of quirks, my boy. While I am slightly hesitant to give you more power, it is, as I said, it is not the quirk that makes one evil. What if I went around destroying buildings and cratering people? Suddenly would I have a villainous quirk? Midoriya nodding along but secretly very glad. Now, as for actually helping you with obtaining quirks, it's actually quite simple really. We're going to have you take the quirks of criminals, death row inmates, or those with life sentences. In this way you are both helping society by removing the quirks of dangerous people who should not have such tools, while also providing you with tools of your own. However, I would recommend picking one quirk in particular to be your actual quirk, my boy. Izuku was confused. Didn't you say it was bad that I did that literally yesterday, All Might? Ah yes, but it was that very same idea that inspired me to create my own version of it. Keeping Bakugo's quirk from him in order to help society is wrong, but why is that? Midoriya shook his head, not understanding. No idea, All Might. Please call me Toshinori in this form, young Midoriya, but anyway. The difference, my boy, is that while cruel and a bully, young Bakugo is not an actual criminal yet, but murderers, rapists, serial killers. These are all people locked up for committing heinous evil crimes, and society would be better off if they did not have any sort or power or quirk. You can even give them a chance to reintegrate into society by removing their quirk, and if they turn over a new leaf, you can return the quirk to them. It's quite ingenious, if I do say so myself. A win-win for everybody involved. We sate your quirk's hunger, so we don't have to worry about you lashing out. Villains are given a chance, and society itself is safer. All Might finished his speech, and Izuku was in awe that his idea could be used in such a manner. So when do we start? The boy asked. Well, young Midoriya, as you do need a quirk to hide your own safely, I have gone ahead and picked out a relatively safe one for you to start with. If you are free today after school, I can pick you up, and we can drive to the location. I have Detective Tsukachi waiting for us. I won't spoil the surprise of the quirk you'll be getting, as I believe it'll be more fun this way. However, you are going to have to prove to me that you can be trusted, as I will not be giving you any more quirks for a while. Think of it as a trial run. The person in question is set to be released in 4 years. If you can go that long taking no other quirks and giving his quirk back at the end of the trial run, it will become a weekly thing. In the meantime, to sate your quirk, we will have you take your mother's quirk, then give it back. Does this sound agreeable to you, young Midoriya? The boy understood how big of a risk All Might was taking for him. Toshinori truly believed in him, and Izuku would never let the man down. Yes, sir, Izuku said resolutely. Although first, there is something I wish to test out, young Midoriya. Can you try taking my quirk? All for One was unable to, and I wish to see if your quirk functions similarly to his. Izuku merely nodded and tried to pull at the strings. The wispy things just kept twisting themselves out of his grasp over and over again. After 10 minutes of not being able to take it, Izuku gave up. So it really is the same quirk. Young Midoriya, I must ask, who are your parents? Izuku paused for a moment, not wanting to divulge his family situation, but relented. My father works overseas. His quirk lets him breathe fire. I haven't seen him since I was 4. He left after I was diagnosed Qiurk'S. He hasn't called my mom once in all that time, or if he has, she's kept it from me. He still sends us money every month, though. My mother, on the other hand, can pull small objects to herself. Honestly, I have no idea why I have All for One. All Might paused in contemplation a moment before responding again. You could perhaps be a great descendant of All for One. It's an amazing quirk. In over 200 years, no one has any quirk even remotely similar to it. Maybe you were simply lucky and some gene in you let you acquire his quirk, or it could have been a random mutation. Such things happen from time to time, but since we have no way to tell, let's not dwell on it. All right then, now we train. The first thing we will be building is your endurance. Then, when you are older, we can begin your real training. We're going for a run, young Midoriya. Oh, and I forgot to mention, I need to keep you close as part of our deal, so I had to transfer you to a new school district. It's a very good private school. One that can be trusted with our secrets. I will be funding your schooling from now on, and before you worry about the money, do remember, I am the #1 hero. I have more money than I could care to do with. Consider it a gift from me for investing in the next symbol of peace. Even though I do not intend to pass my quirk on to you, you will be great regardless, my boy. Izuku started crying. Really, this was the best. All Might was the best. He knew he would need to find a new school, and All Might went ahead and did it for him. Yes, sir, I won't let you down. However, what should I tell my mom? Tell her the truth, my boy. The number one hero is training you to become the best, and that you're a worthy investment. Izuku broke down even more. Geez, kid, you could stand to cry less, you know. Izuku threw himself at All Might and started hugging the gaunt skeleton of a man. Toshinori wouldn't admit it, but he already cared for the boy. Toshinori ended up driving Izuku to his new school. He was kind of surprised the number one drove such a shitty car, but then again I guess it worked, as let the man remain incognito. After all, who was going to guess that the number one hero drove a beat-up old station wagon? All Might handed him a backpack halfway through the drive. Confused, Izuku opened it, finding it had a ton of school supplies in it and one of his hero analysis books, number 10 to be exact. I knew you were going to need supplies, as you would likely not have the required materials for this school, All Might stated matter-of-factly. And oh, why don't you open the first page of that book, my boy? Izuku was confused, but did as he was told, and it was signed by All Might. He couldn't believe how much his life changed in the span of a day. Izuku was truly blessed. After a good 30-minute drive, they came within viewing distance of the school. Izuku was shocked. The school was absolutely massive, and he realized that he was now in the rich part of town. Izuku imagined the price to go to this school was astronomical. The golden plaque outside the school read, Sumi Private Academy. He thought the name sounded familiar, but he wasn't 100% certain on that. Izuku and All Might in his skeletal form walked up to the gates. All Might hit the comms button next to the gate before they opened, allowing the two entry. Apparently, you needed a keycard to get in normally. Izuku was shocked at the level of security being employed by this school, but he thought, I guess that's just how rich people do things. Especially when you can be ransomed off for ridiculous amounts of money, Izuku thought to himself darkly. Finally inside, All Might dropped Izuku off at the teacher's lounge, where he met his homeroom teacher, a woman with jet black hair and a very female office worker kind of vibe going on. She introduced herself as Miss Yaoyorozu, which was a mouthful to say at the least. Apparently Izuku was going to be in the same class as her daughter was in, and that she hoped they would get along, as her daughter was kind of a loner due to previous situations she had been through. Izuku just nodded and said he would do his best. Once Izuku finally got to the room, he was forced to introduce himself, and he managed to royally fuck that up. When Izuku stammered out a name that sounded nothing like his own, and a bunch of the students laughed at him for it. Izuku having extremely embarrassing himself in the span of literally 5 seconds. The day went from being amazing to awful, as one particularly loud blonde kid with blue eyes shouted about how students of this supreme academy ought to be able to handle himself in a public setting. Izuku just ignored the guy and went to seat, where he finally noticed what must have been Miss Yaoyorozu's daughter, because she looked like a carbon copy of their teacher, just aged down a lot. Thankfully, the girl was one of the few people in the room not laughing at him. Yaoyorozu spoke. Don't worry about him, he's an absolute buffoon. Rich people that, best class of people that. He looks down on everyone. The girl spit out that last bit. She apparently had no like for this boy. Izuku was a bit surprised at first that a girl was willing to talk to him, since none ever had before. Oh well, thanks. Izuku let the end of that drag out. Momo Yaoyorozu, the jerk's name is Monoma. What about you? The girl noticed that the small, scared, green-haired child in front of her did not resemble the wealthy elite at all, and she briefly wondered how he got into this school. Izuku Midoriya, it's nice to meet you, Yaoyorozu. The boy beamed at her. Well, he seemed nice enough, she thought. Likewise. The rest of the day passed uneventfully, that is until lunch. Izuku had just procured his favorite katsudon. Before looking around the cafeteria, Izuku saw Yaoyorozu by herself, and he decided that she seemed nice enough, so he went to go sit down with her. Hello, Yaoyorozu, do you mind if I sit here? Izuku noticed everyone staring at him like he was an idiot. The girl simply shrugged. He seemed innocent enough, then again so did everybody else. You may. Thanks, it's super hard joining in the middle of the year when everyone already has their friend circles. Izuku rubbed the back of his head. Getting kinda weirded out by the fact the cafeteria had gone nearly silent, Izuku could feel the stares boring into the back of his head, doing his best to ignore them. "So what's your quirk, Yaoyorozu?" The girl visibly shook when Izuku asked that. He backpedaled immediately. "Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't realize it was a personal thing. You don't have to tell me." The girl looked like she was deliberating something before finally responding. "No, it's fine. My quirk is called creation. I can make any non-organic material as long as I know the chemical makeup and I have enough lipids to generate the item in question." Izuku watched her make a small metal rod appear from her hand. Izuku froze. That was the single coolest quirk he had ever heard of. Izuku felt the familiar hunger in his chest, but he shut that down as soon as it appeared. "Holy shit, that's amazing, Yaoyorozu. There are so many ways to use that. Do you mind if I ask some questions?" Izuku was about to be lost in his world, but then he realized people were still staring at him, and he could ignore it no longer. "Actually, instead, Yaoyorozu, why are they all staring at me?" he whispered to the girl. "It's because of me, most likely. The last guy who tried to sit next to me, I kicked in the crotch." Yaoyorozu looked pained as she said that. "Oh, do I need to worry?" Everyone around him was still staring, and it was getting unnerving. "That has yet to be seen, Midoriya. So tell me, why did you transfer here from out of nowhere, in the middle of the semester?" The girl then shot a look to everyone in the cafeteria. They all slowly but surely returned to their own conversations. "Oh well, I kinda got bullied a lot. It wasn't safe for me there." Izuku was hoping he didn't sound that pathetic. Yaoyorozu looked puzzled. "Weird, who would hurt someone who seems so innocent? It'd be like kicking a puppy." "Oh well, you know, it just kinda happened. I tried to stand up for another kid, and I refused to fight back, so they just decided to use me as a punching bag instead. God, please don't let this girl think he's a loser too." "Well, I'm sorry to hear that, Midoriya. I'll do my best to make sure no one here does anything like that." Yaoyorozu gave him a look of nonchalance. "Thanks, Yaoyorozu. So why did you kick that guy in the dick?" Izuku watched as Yaoyorozu sputtered out milk while giggling. Izuku was confused. He didn't think he'd said anything funny. Yaoyorozu looked at the confused face on Midoriya for a moment before swallowing what milk she still had left and answered. "I knew it. You aren't part of the upper class, are you? We wouldn't be caught dead using any language as crass as that, and it's the second time you've done so." "Oh, I see. Is there anything else I should know?" Izuku blushed a bit clearly out of his depth. The girl just laughed. "No offense, Midoriya, but the etiquette they teach us takes years to learn. Besides, I like you more this way. It's way more refreshing talking to someone who isn't so stuffy all the time. Also, if you wanted to know why I kicked him in the dick, he was acting like a complete fool. He came over and attempted to court me. His advances were unwelcome, to say the least." Izuku was quickly learning to not get on Yaoyorozu's bad side, but he had a bit of an idea. "Is the commoner already being a bad influence on the young miss? We wouldn't want them to corrupt such a noble young lady." Izuku drew out his haughtiest impression. Thankfully, his horrid impression of nobility only seemed to make her laugh more. Momo finally managed to recover from laughing. "Well, if you're going to act like that, I may at least give you a few tips. With utensils, you start from the outside and move in. As for why we have 10 utensils, that's because nobility was stupid." It was at that moment Izuku realized he was going to like it here. Izuku was sitting in the passenger seat of All Might's shitty station wagon wondering where they were going today. As it turns out, Izuku was going to be having his mind blown a lot today. Besides talking to a girl for the first time in years, he was being taken to Tartarus, the Tartarus. Izuku was pretty certain you had to convicted of least a felony, if not outright murder, to get landed in here. Wait a minute, Izuku realized. What if it all was a lie and All Might's just tossing him in here? No, there's no way All Might would do that to him. That meant whoever's quirk Izuku was taking must have done some really bad things. All Might wasn't joking when they were going to be using his quirk to better society, and in some ways he was already acting like a hero. After the fifth security check and the constant questioning of why a 10-year-old child was with the #1 hero, they found Tsukachi waiting for them outside an interrogation room. Tsukachi just gave the pair a nod and greeted them. "So how are we doing this?" Izuku asked inquisitively. Detective Tsukachi responded dryly. "The person inside is responsible for second-degree murder and illegal quirk usage. Even if the quirk wasn't an offensive one, it still counts. They swear it was unintentional, but there was evidence to prove otherwise. Since his crime was relatively light compared to the others staying here as well as having a more appropriate quirk, he was chosen for this test. I doubt you have heard of the villain, as they were relatively unknown, with no priors and no other crimes. They didn't even earn a villain name. He is set to be released in 4 years, having served 16 of his 20-year sentence, only if he remains obedient though, at which time you will return the quirk." Tsukachi paused, taking a breath before continuing. "We have chosen this one specifically for multiple reasons: returning of a quirk after you become attached to it, its relative harmlessness, and finally ease of use. For the next 4 years, this will be your quirk. Are you ready, Midoriya?" Izuku merely nodded. "Good. He is bound and gagged to protect your identity. Just walk in and take it as soon as you are ready." The detective held the door open for them and motioned for them to enter. Izuku saw a man in the standard orange jumpsuit used by most prisons, with a black bag over his head and cuffs on his hands. Izuku walked up and hesitantly raised his hand toward the person. The detective then looked at All Might, then back to the child. Tsukachi was admittedly uneasy with this whole setup. He really didn't think loading up a potential new All-for-One with more and more powerful quirks was a good idea, but he had to trust All Might on this. Tsukachi did, however, have to admit being able to permanently remove the quirks of inmates would make transporting them so much easier, and hopefully with this arrangement the boy is less likely to become the next All-for-One. "Just go ahead and do it." The detective trying to encourage the boy. "Whenever you are ready, my boy." All Might gave the boy a heads up. Izuku finally touched the handcuffed man on the shoulder, and that was that. Izuku felt the new quirk flow into him. Izuku was briefly registering pain as he felt his eyes change, and when he looked back towards the hero and detective duo, they shuddered for a second. Toshinori walked over before putting his hand on Izuku. "My boy, are you all right? Your eyes unchanged." He looked to Tsukachi. "I thought you said it would be harmless and easy to use, not change his eye color and hurt the boy." Tsukachi realized his error. "Izuku, are you all right? I didn't realize the reason the man's eyes looked the way they did was because of his quirk." Izuku just winced as he opened his eyes tentatively. Everything felt more alive, so to speak. He could see so much more, and while it was disorienting at first, he was adapting quickly. Realizing the other two were worried about him, "I'm fine, thank you, Detective and All Might. I was just having trouble adjusting to it at first." "Wait, what did you say about my eyes?" Tsukachi just sheepishly pulled out his phone, turning on the camera app and handing it to Izuku. The greenette looked on in shock. His eyes had turned completely black. No irises, just black sclere. It was kind of unsettling if he were being honest. "How are we supposed to hide this? Eye color doesn't just change overnight," Izuku shouted while panicking. "Well, we can fix that, and it's my fault, so I'll front the cost. We will just get you some Halloween lenses to return your eyes to their natural color," the detective said apologetically. "Well, that's fine then, I guess. So can we talk somewhere more privately?" Izuku asked, pointing at the prisoner. "Don't worry, he cannot hear a word we're saying, but sure, let's go to a different room to talk about this," Tsukachi said, guiding them from the room. As they left, a prison guard came in and took the villain away. They simply moved to the next interrogation room over before continuing. "Well, I'd to apologize again, Izuku," the detective said sheepishly. "I'll be more careful in my quirk selection in the future. Don't worry, this won't happen again. So tell me, how are the eyes?" The quirk was called Ultra Sight. It lets the user change between 6 different visions. Apparently, there is some strain on your eyes if you use one of the enhanced visions for too long, but other than that it is quite safe. In case you were wondering, the 6 different visions are thermal, radiation, night, zoom, blacklight, and a form of X-ray vision that lets you see through walls, but it apparently only let you see yellow silhouettes of living things to about 30 ft out. All in all, it's a very versatile quirk. It should be perfect for you to practice with. Tsukachi finished his brief explanation completely unaware of what was about to occur due to the information dump he had just dropped on Midoriya. Izuku paused for just a second before exploding into a torrent of incomprehensible words. All Might being absolutely blown away by the sight before his eyes. He briefly wondered if his love of quirks is a natural thing, or is it because of his quirks yearning for more quirks. Either way, Toshinori needed this to stop. Midoriya, my boy, calm yourself. Can you even breathe? Izuku stopped his muttering and meekly apologized. I'm sorry, quirks just really excite me, you know. There's so much you can do with them. All Might nodded. I can understand. It's like gaining a new part of yourself, I suppose, but do remember, as of right now, that's a temporary loan. If the man messes up further, it may become permanent. As it stands, you'll only have that quirk until high school at UA, where we can reveal the full function of your quirk. That reminds me. Surprise. Izuku froze when All Might handed him a letter, and on it were the 2 golden letters UA. Izuku paused once more before turning his gaze to his mentor. There's no way this is what I think it is, right? Just go ahead and open it, my boy. Izuku did, and it was. It was a recommendation letter to UA, signed by All Might and the principal of UA. If Izuku wanted, he was already accepted. He didn't even have to take the recommendation exam. In fact, it is encouraged that he doesn't due to the nature of his quirk. The principal does wish to meet up with Izuku before he can actually enroll at the school to learn about him and his personality firsthand. Honestly though, it was more of a formality than anything. For all intensive purposes, he has been accepted into UA. At the age of 10, Izuku can feel just how badly the school government don't want to let him become a villain. It's as if they're saying, we'll do whatever you want to help, just don't turn into something evil. Which kind of soured Izuku's feelings of accomplishment, but he decided to just say fuck it and roll with it. If they are going to give me privileges, might as well make use of them. The boy jumped forward, pulling the number 1 into an intense embrace, thanking the man for everything he's done for him. Izuku returned home later with the pair of contact lenses Tsukachi had gotten for him in hand. Izuku sauntered into the living room looking for his mother. He wanted to show her his new eyes in order to let her know it's all going to be okay now. Izuku hadn't gotten the chance to tell her everything that happened after all. Mom, I'm back. The quirk stealer called into the house. His mother appeared and pulled him into a hug. Honey, I got a call from All Might's secretary about him taking you on as his successor. I'm so proud of you, honey, you're going to do great. Oh, what happened to your eyes, dear? Inko stopped speaking, only staring deep into the black abyss that were her son's eyes now. It's my trial quirk, Izuku responded brightly. I can see all kinds of things now, through the walls, in the dark, great distances. I can even see heat signatures. It's an amazing quirk. Inko was a little shocked. She hadn't expected her son to be given another quirk so soon. But after her son explained why, she realized why it had happened so fast. Izuku needed to have a quirk to hide his original. Did All Might get it for you? Inko asked. Yeah, I'm already using my quirk to help people, Mom, it's great. I took the quirk of a murderer so he can't use it to hurt people anymore. Oh, and on top of that, I've already been accepted into UA. I just have to meet the principal first, Izuku explained to his mother. Inko did not like that her son was using the quirk of a known murderer, but she guessed it was fine since All Might himself had set it up. Oh, Izu, I'm so proud of you, she nuzzled into him. In honor of your first quirk, we're having Katsuden tonight, honey. Izuku just shut down. This is literally the best day of his life, no questions asked. After he finished dinner and went to bed, Izuku lay in bed staring up at the ceiling thinking. Alright Izuku, we just gotta go 4 years without stealing a quirk. Get caught using any additional quirks he is given. Keep up my training with all might, study my ass off. Impress one of the most terrifying beings on this planet. And overall just don't fuck something up. Shouldn't be too hard, the greenette thought to himself, and he drifted off happily to sleep. Chapter 3. 2 years have passed since the blessing that is All Might has entered Izuku's life, and the boy's never been happier. The man has easily done more for him than anyone else has. Izuku wouldn't say it to the man's face, but Izuku is starting to see him like a father figure, much more so than his real father. If Izuku could even give that waste of space that title. The quirk giver's constant endurance training had made him such a good runner. Izuku has a real friend now, and he even finally figured out what he wanted to do for his hero career. The life Izuku had before All Might entered were night and day. So when the man gave Izuku a last-minute text to meet with him at Dagaba Beach in the middle of the night, Izuku didn't hesitate. Izuku threw his shoes on and ran out of the house. Izuku's eyes began humming as they shifted to night vision. This way Izuku could travel quickly, but more importantly safe on his way to the beach. After all, the boy didn't want to get caught by some villain or a homeless person along the way, but he did want to get to the beach as quickly as possible. When Izuku finally stumbled upon the dump of a beach that forever changed his life, he easily spotted All Might after turning off night vision and turning on thermal. The boy quickly walked up to All Might announcing his presence so as to not startle the man. "Toshinori." The gaunt man turned and gave a simple smile. "Young Midoriya, it is good to see you, even though I suppose I saw you for our run this morning. There have been some developments, my boy." All Might's face turned sour. "Although it is earlier than expected, you are needed to return those eyes this weekend." The man in question got out of his 20-year sentence 2 years early for being on good behavior. "I know it was always going to be this way, but hey, on the bright side, we can start having you obtain more quirks sooner rather than later. In addition, we will no longer need to have you keep taking your mother's quirk." Toshinori looked rather disappointed by the news for some reason. However, Izuku could only see this as positive news. The boy already knew he would lose the eyes, but now he can start getting so much more. Isn't this good news, All Might? It means we can start earlier than intended." Izuku was puzzled to say the least. "True it is, but I figured you would take the news worse. I could tell how happy those eyes made you, but if you are not saddened by it, then I have no reason to be either, young Midoriya," All Might said after re-inflating into his hero form. "If you are okay with it, then I will schedule the meeting the same way we did the first time on this upcoming Saturday. But it won't be all sad, my boy. After all,